We're at the cusp of the second chapter. Yeah? So we ended up yesterday, I think, with talking about the creation of human beings. Yes? Great. So the story of the creation of human beings, God says, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. This is going to be found in chapter 1, verse 26. Chapter 1, verse 26. God says, let's make man in our image and our likeness, and they will rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the animals and all of the earth and everything that crawls on the ground. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Zachar unekeva, male and female, he created them. So it's very clear from here that at least in this version of the story of the creation of human beings, man and woman were created almost simultaneously. And the deeper sources actually say that originally man and woman were created as one being, a male and female androgynous being. And we're going to, now obviously this is understood, I'd say probably metaphorically. Yeah, as I've said at the beginning, the whole creation story cannot be understood on a simple level. So just keep that in mind as we're reading. And he blessed them, and he said, and this is the first mitzvah in the Torah, is to be fruitful and multiply. Why do you think that would be the first mitzvah in the Torah? Why is it the first mitzvah to human beings?
Because you need human beings to learn Torah.
What?
You need more human beings.
You need more human beings. That's definitely true. The Talmud brings a verse that says that the world was not created to sit empty. So you definitely need more human beings. But why is it the first one? Samuel?
Be fruitful?
That is the first mitzvah.
Oh, you already said that.
Yes, that's the first. That's what we're reading right now, right? Why, Sam?
I feel like fruitful can have like a double meaning. Like fruitful is referring to the fruit we talked about last time.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you want
It's the same word in Hebrew, by the way. Pri and Peru is.
Because like the fruits of your labor tend to be the mitzvahs and that spiritual essence that one gains. So by making more people, you can have more people achieving that spiritual essence.
That's a lovely idea. That's very nice. The more people there are, the more people that can do good things. Great. Ellie?
Quick question. Where again does it say rule over the world? And
it says it right here in verse 26. He will rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the animals and the whole earth.
Is that also to be understood as a mitzvah to rule? Or?
It's more of a reality. He will do it. That's what he'll do. Now, we have to understand, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that we should be greedy industrialists who pollute the world and use factory farms? I think the answer is probably not. As I said before, there's two ways to understand what rulership means. In fact, there's even two words in it in Hebrew to represent two different types of rulership. There's one that's leadership, which is because I have the greatest vision in mind, and I'm capable of organizing all of the other forces that are at play. So I'm put in charge because I'm the one that's capable of bringing everything up to its highest service. So in a sense, the leader is the person that's actually supporting everybody. That means I have to exercise responsibility to make sure that everything is doing the right thing, but it also means that I'm responsible for the health of the overall system. So in that sense, as stewards of the entire universe, we have to make sure that fish aren't going extinct and that the earth is healthy, because everything is here for a reason. We have to make sure that it's doing what it's meant to do. The other understanding of rulership is I'm the greedy tyrant and you're all working for me, and I can sit back with my feet up on my desk and if there's a rebellion, I'll put you down violently. So I don't think that that's what we're talking about, even though I think that we have this skewed understanding of power today, where today the word power is always negative. Power is bad. Whereas I think a person who's a little bit more integrated and understanding realizes that there's always got to be some sort of organizing principle to any system. and the whoever sits at the top is really just sitting at the bottom, just holding everything up. But it requires humility. Let us make man. Right? So God invests in human beings right from the outset. How are you going to rule over all the fish and all the birds and all the animals? I need to be the person that's able to bring everyone to the table and to make everyone's voices heard. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, so that's the rulership. He created them. He blessed them. The reason why he gives them the commandment of being fruitful and multiplying as the first commandment is because how is human beings made? How are they made? Let's make man in our image, in our likeness. What is God's primary role as he relates to us?
Creator.
He's a creator. He's a creator. What is the most creative thing that we can possibly do as human beings?
Create more.
Create humans. It is the ultimate creative act. The ultimate creative act. We don't value it enough today. But it is single-handedly the most valuable contribution that you can make to the world is to bring good, healthy children into the world. That's what changes the world. You know, what's so amazing about a place like Machon Yaakov and Machon Shlomo, you know, it used to be Machon Shlomo only, and then 20 years ago they decided they want to expand. But they didn't want to make a bigger yeshiva. They wanted to keep the place small because the philosophy of the yeshiva forever, since its inception was, we're not here to change everything all at once. We're here to take really, really amazing people, invest a lot of time in those people so that they can do great things. And the same thing should be true with our children. And what ends up happening now is that now, you know, the yeshiva's been around for, I don't know, almost 40 years. And you don't know how many tens of thousands of human beings are a product of this place. The children and now grandchildren of graduates, of machons. It's a revolution. It just takes a long time. And anything that's done well needs time. So don't underestimate how valuable it is to have children. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. It will test every single limit of your patience and who you think you know yourself as a kind and sensitive human being. And you will stumble and fall so many times when someone wheezes on the floor for the third time in a day. But it's great. It's amazing. Did I sell that well, or is that no? Yeah, Austin.
Well, I'm kind of struck that for much of human history, this wasn't like being fruitful and multiply just happened, right? Like,
right.
You know, like if you just went in with your wife, like you just have kids.
Yeah.
And now it's much more a choice.
Yeah.
And we've seen how in every single Western country, except for Israel, they are well below the
Population
fertility rate. And so
yeah.
it's just interesting to me like how you might say, hey, why is this so important? Who cares about that? It's just like humans just know what's going to happen. For hundreds
Got
of
it.
years, said that.
It's a mitzvah.
Now, with technology,
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's right. It's incredible.
It's even more relevant now than it was previously.
Such a good point. You might think that this should be obvious. Why do we need to be commanded? The answer is, look at today. Look at us. Okay. Great. He says, look, I've given you all the grass that gives seeds across the earth and all the fruits, right? These for you for eating. That's initially what human beings were allowed to eat. All of the animals and all the birds, they're allowed to eat the grass, the bushes. Okay. Yeah.
Can we ask non-Russian questions?
Yeah, I'm moving forward a little bit in time, but we can too. I'm just going to limit it a little bit so we can get to.
And email me creative though.
Yeah.
But you came later.
So I don't know if you were here when I mentioned this before, but we're going to see there are two versions of the creation story. We're in version 1, and according to version 1, it seems like male and female were created at exactly the same time. Okay? And we'll get to this when we see the next version of the story, and we'll compare the two.
This is like the blueprint.
Right? God thought to create the world one way, he created the world one other way. We'll see. All right. And God saw everything that he did, and it was Very good. Now, if you'll notice, every other day of creation, it just says good. After each day, God said it was good. It was very good. Do you know what very good means? What was very good about the sixth day? Cole?
Humans were created, and humans have unlimited growth and unlimited potential.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. You're close.
Can't quantify very.
Yeah, well, there's a strange thing about very, and this is why Rashi doesn't bring it here, but the Medrash does. And the Medrash has a simple question, which is, when God says something is good, it's good. Like, it doesn't get better than that. You know, when you and I say, well, the produce was good this year, that just means it wasn't great. But the word tov in Hebrew, tov means it has achieved its highest expression. It is reaching the purpose of its existence. That is tov. That's what good is. So what does it mean that something could be very good? So the Medrash says something absolutely mind-blowing. It says, if it had just said tov, that would have meant the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination. But because it says tov ma'od, that means it's referring to the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Have you heard of these concepts before? The Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara? So this is, Judaism 101. We're all invested with different parts of us, but as human beings, in order for us to have free will, there has to be the possibility of us to choose good and to choose evil. And the two parts of us, or the two capacities of looking at the world, one from an expansive, holistic, connective reality, and one from a egotistical, narrow perspective, right? We can choose to look at the world in two ways. I can look at when they put out lunch or dinner here, I can say, oh, I need to eat. So I'm going to run to the front and I'm going to take 4 helpings because I have to eat. Or you can look at it as, well, I'm going to make sure that I take only enough now so that everyone can have first. And if there's more later, I'll have seconds. Right? That's a pretty good way of spelling out the moral challenges that we have in everyday life. So those two forces inside of me are called the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. The desire to express myself in a way that's holistic and expansive, and a way that I want to express myself as a way of being cut off from my reality, being cut off from other people and from God. The Torah and the Medrash say that the reason why the sixth day of creation was very good is because very means there was the introduction of evil, of the evil impulse in human beings. Now, how could that be? How could we say that the Medrash, that the Torah says that the evil inclination is very good? And it's a great question. You know who asked the question? The Medrash. Immediately after the rabbis say, Tov means Yetzer Tov, Tov Ma'od means Yetzer Hara, the Medrash says, is it possible that God could call the Yetzer Hara Tov? It's Ra, it's evil, it's terrible. So what's the answer? Joey?
I'd say that in order for your Yetzer Tov to be fully expressed, it needs a Yetzer Hara, because that's what provides it the challenge and the ability to make the choice.
Awesome. That's the first answer. The first answer is good without the possibility of evil is only good. But when you introduce evil, now it becomes very good. Right? The possibility of evil means the choice to do good is now really good. That's what's better than good. What's better than good is good in the face of evil. That's answer number 1. Everyone understand what Joey's saying? Yeah? So be grateful that you have an impulse to do evil, because otherwise your actions would be meaningless. You wouldn't be a moral being. In the same way that an animal that instinctively does something good or moral, that's not called morality. Even though there is an animal morality, right? There is fairness. Anyone saw the YouTube video, the Franz de Waal video, where they have 2 monkeys in a cage that can see each other? They give, they get them to pull a lever, and one gets like a carrot stick, and he's very happy, he likes the carrot. And then the other one pulls the lever and he gets a grape, and he's very happy, and the other monkey's looking on. And then the first monkey, they say, pull the lever again. They get him to pull the lever. Now he's waiting for the grape. They give him a carrot again. You know what he does? He throws the carrot at the tester, at the researcher, because it's not fair. It's not fair. So animals have a level of morality. There's tit for tat. You can see reciprocity in animals. You can see compassion in animals. But that's not morality because it's built in. It's instinctive. Now, mind you, there's also instinctive human morality. There are things, we're generally nice people. We don't like to get into conflict as human beings. That doesn't make us moral. Morality begins when it's possible for you to do something that's not moral. And not just because it's your nature. So that's Tov Ma'od. Yeah?
So good is good and bad is very good?
Yes, because bad gives bad gives good the possibility of being very good. Bad makes the whole system very good. That's the answer. There's a deeper answer, which I don't know if I want to get into. The deeper answer is that it's entirely possible to use your evil for good.
It's what?
It's possible to use your evil for good.
Okay.
And that's how you can make your good into very good. That's how you can do something even greater.
Can you give an example?
Yeah. So there's a couple of examples. The first example would be, I'm a very wealthy person, and I'm a really stingy person. I hate giving away money, but you know what I like? I like it when people give me honor and respect. So what I'll do is I'll donate money and I'll put my name on a building, and that way I'll overcome my stinginess with a different evil impulse, which is the desire for honor. Okay. Now, meaning that's only good if I know that that's what I'm doing. In other words, some people just like their names on a building and whatever. But if somebody says to themselves, I want to work on my stinginess or my laziness, the only way I can do that right now is with some incentive that's less than idealistic.
Okay.
As long as I'm striving towards getting to a place where I don't need the incentive, then that's using my evil for good. You see that? It's an amazing tool. They give an example. A guy, hates waking up in the morning, but he wants to be seen as the best bacher in the yeshiva. So he says, I'm going to use my desire for honor, for respect, in order to get up early, because I know that if I'm there first, then everyone will say, ooh, look at him. Now, I don't want to end there. I don't want to stop there. And what ends up happening is, even if you use a less than ideal incentive to do the right thing, eventually, the more you do the right thing, it drips onto you. It has an effect on you, and you start to feel good just about doing the right thing. I had this. Yeah.
Does it say that in the Torah?
Mitoch shelo lishma bo lishma. By starting off doing things for the wrong reasons, you'll end up doing it for the right reasons. I had this when I struggle so much with volunteering my time. It's very hard for me to give my time away. So once we had this, we had to do this thing at Aish where we took some young professionals out to go make food and supplies for the homeless, and would walk around London and go hand them out. And I knew I had to do it. It was my job. And but as we were out there on the streets, I was like, this feels amazing. Why don't I do this more often, right? So I didn't do it because I wanted to, or I wanted to help people. But the more you do the right thing, the more it feels good to do the right thing, and the less you need the incentives. That's one example. Within the deep answer, there's a deeper answer, which is that there's a way to use your Yetzer Hara simply because the capacity for evil means that you have something called an ego. Ego. Ra, at its source, the word Ra in Hebrew Ra means evil. But, like I said, if you want to look for definitions in the Torah, you have to look for that root in other contexts. So, tell me if you guys are familiar with this word. What does teruah mean?
Broken.
What?
Like broken.
Broken. Yeah. Where do we see that?
In the shop.
In the shofar, right? It's the broken up notes. Yeah. And you see it elsewhere in other places in the Torah that the word teroaim means to break off, to splinter. So the word evil actually means broken off from the whole. So good means that expansive, holistic, connective reality. Ra means I'm broken off from the whole. I have a limited perspective. I'm a me, as opposed to I'm just part of the system. That's the root of all evil, not just money.
So that translates to what exactly?
Teruah,
Yeah.
it either means the broken up notes on the shofar, teruah, or it can mean to break off, to splinter. So the root of all of evil is the broken offness, where I sense that I'm not you. You and I have nothing in common. So I can practice cruelty to you. I can be oblivious to my environment. I can even be evil to myself. How can you do that? How can I be evil to myself? I love this example.
Smoking cigarettes.
Smoking cigarettes. Why is that being evil to myself? Because I'm cut off from my future self. There are things that are not quite as pernicious as smoking cigarettes. How about sitting around and spending hours a day playing video games instead of doing something that you know you love and that's important to you? That might also be evil. Now, mind you, I mentioned this before, and you have to keep this in mind. Relaxing and taking a bit of time off is not, by definition, evil. It depends what you're doing it for. If you know yourself and you say, I need to chill out, this yeshiva stuff is intense. I'm learning deep ideas for 8, 10, 15 hours a day, and I need to just shut off for a little bit. Otherwise, I'll go crazy or I'll have a mental breakdown. So then go take some time off. Go for a run in the woods, go play some guitar, or even play a video game if that's what does it for you. But for somebody who could be doing something that's moving them towards their intended purpose and something they really value, and instead they're playing video games. There was a violinist, I think he said, who when he was he was a professional violinist, and he said when he was very young, there was one morning when it was so cold out, he decided he would sleep in and skip his violin lesson. And he said, in that moment, I was disconnected from my future self. Because he knew he wanted to be a violinist. He loved playing violin. But right in that moment, it was just too inconvenient for him. It was too cold. So that's how we can be evil to ourselves. So, where was I going with this? Oh, there is one way that we can use that evil in and of itself, which is simply the fact that I perceive myself to be an independent being, that I have any sense of existence outside of the whole. I'm not just part of the void, right? I have a consciousness. That's sometimes what allows me to do in this world. I'd say it like this. There are certain philosophies and practices where a person attempts to achieve what's called ego death, where you kind of cease to be. You're just part of one with the world. Do you know what those people do?
Take LSD.
They do nothing. That's the path towards ego, or at least the shortcut to a type of ego death. But the people who really achieve ego death, it's like they've just rejoined. There's some people describe it as like a drop of water that rejoins the ocean. If you have no sense of self, then you're not motivated to do anything in this world. The Medrash says, what makes the evil inclination good? Because without the evil inclination, nobody would build a house. Nobody would get married. Nobody would have kids. Nobody would want to improve upon the world.
How?
How what?
How does that make sense? If you're saying if it's just good, then doing those things is good. Where's the evil?
What I mean is,
There's no way
You have to think about it not in terms of evil, but in terms of slightly broken off from the whole. The moment that I can understand myself as having an independent existence, that's Ra, right? It's not real. That's an illusion. But it's a necessary illusion that we need to have. Because if you really dissolve your ego entirely, then you do nothing. Because there's nothing to do. But the moment that you say, well, look, I'm an independent being. I have needs, I have motivations, I have aspirations. Well, God wants you to do that. That's why we're here. You need the smallest sliver, shadow of ego in order to do that. That's how evil can be very good as well.
Well, why do you define that as ego rather than like, I don't know, like different word than
Ego means self. That's what it means. We just, a sense of self. That's what it means. Yeah.
I heard a different, and maybe this is just another abbreviation, but I heard a great share once by Green out of Detroit. He said ego stands for edging God out.
Well, again, most of the time, ego is not a useful thing because the way that we use ego, first of all, that acronym was added later. That's not what ego means.
Right.
That's not what Freud or the Greeks were thinking when they came up with that term. But it's a nice idea because what it means is that if I have too much ego, it means I'm too self-involved. I'm not thinking about myself as part of a greater whole. And that edges God out. Because connection to God means connection to greater and greater and greater concentric circles of reality until I can connect to that great oneness that encompasses everything. So most of the time, a person who has too much ego, you're absolutely right. But God gave us a sense of independent existence. And we have to hold on to just the smallest sliver of that in order to do anything. Because if there's no me, then there's no me to build the world. Yeah, Brandon.
So you think it's okay to say that you need a sense of individuality?
Absolutely. And hopefully, well, not for now, but it's certainly not a contradiction that you can have a healthy sense of self and be communally minded and be part of something greater. That's what we want to do. Yeah,
It's
Joey.
required.
It's true that.
It's absolutely required. Yes.
Well, Hashem wants us to find this perfect balance. Isn't there a saying that says we should tell ourselves that the world was created for ourselves, and on the other hand, we should
Yeah.
tell ourselves we're nothing?
There was a later idea. Some say it was a Hasidic idea or a Musar idea that they used to keep in 2 pieces of paper, one in each pocket. Bishvili nivra olam, the world was created for me, and Anochi afar ve'efer, I'm ashes and dust. And both are true. They're both true. Okay, let's move on. That's evil, all right? We'll need that a little bit to understand the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but we'll get there. All right. Then it says, God completed the heavens and the earth, and he completed on the 7th day all of his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all of his work that he had done, and he blessed the day, the 7th day, and he sanctified it. He made it Kodesh. Because he rested, Shavas means to rest, from all of his work that he had done, that he had created to do. Okay. Man, there's so much to do. Should we do this Rashi?
It's a good Rashi.
Okay. Let's do it. Okay. Chapter 2, verse 2. Is everyone near a Chumash Rashi that they can use? If not, swing around, see if you can look on with someone who's got it. Chapter 2, verse 2. The heading is, and God completed on the 7th day. You with me? All right. Brandon, you want to read for us? Have you read already of the Rashi?
God completed on the 7th day.
Yeah.
The Tana Rav Shimon says, flesh and blood man, who does not know his times and his moments precisely, must add from the profound, i.e. the weekday, to the sacred, i.e. Shabbat. The Holy One, blessed is he who knows his times and his moments, entered the 7th day like a hare's breath.
Good. All right. So that answer number one. Answer number one is that Rabbi Shimon says that human beings don't know precisely the times. Therefore, you need to add from the mundane onto the holy. In other words, when we bring in Shabbat, we bring it in several minutes early, because we can't be exactly precise with when the precise, quarter of a second Shabbos begins. So we start a little bit earlier. But not so with Hashem. He knows times and moments, and he slices between Friday afternoon and Friday evening in a just like a hair's breadth. Okay? Second answer. Go for it, Brandon.
When he finished the work of creation that day. Alternatively, what was the world lacking at the end of the sixth day? Rest. Shabbat came, rest came.
Great. Good.
The work was completed and finished.
Okay, take your guy next to you, take 3 minutes, and do the first 3 steps in Rashi. We'll see you back soon. What you got for me? What you got for me? Who's got a step 1? What's Rashi's question? Whew. Azrael in the back there.
Yeah. So the question is, God was doing the work 6 days. Why does it write that He completed it on the 7th?
Great. There's a direct contradiction in the text. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it says that He completed the work on the 7th day.
Yes.
But he rested from His work on the 7th day. So was He working or was He not working? Simple as that. That's the contradiction. You see it? It says He completed His work on the 7th day. But that means He was still working on the 7th day. And then it says He rested from all of His work on the 7th day.
Yes.
So either the 7th day was a day of rest or it was a day of work. Which one is it?
Why can't you do both? Why can't you complete and then rest?
Because it says that he rested on the 7th day from all the work that He had done. So the 7th day is a day of rest. 7th day is a day of rest. That's why we rest.
Rest in peace.
He sanctified it, right? It's totally separate. All right. Answers. What's Rashi's answer? What's Rashi's answer? Who wants to paraphrase the first answer? Ben.
I think Rashi is saying that Shimon is saying that from man's perspective, we can't tell when time begins and time ends and when days begin and when days end.
Yes.
Our perspective is when we're looking at the 7th day, but it's actually the 6th day.
Excellent. So if you were to be, so to speak, observing God in the factory, right, on Friday afternoon, late afternoon, and the moment He clocks out, you would think that He is working on Shabbos. But God, who invented time, can manipulate time and can see into the exact moment when Shabbos begins, and it's at that moment that He ends. It's at that moment. So for us, it looks like He finished the job on the 7th day, even though He didn't really. That's one answer. What's His second answer? What's His second answer?
I have a question.
Before we get to questions, let's just clarify the answers. What's His second answer? Roy?
That the world was missing rest on the 7th, so then on the 7th day He gave rest.
Okay. And how does that answer the question?
It was incomplete without rest.
Rest is also a type of work. To introduce rest into the world is a type of work. He completed the work by creating something called rest. Yeah? Okay. Step 3.
What was the first answer?
The first answer is, even though the verse tells us He finished the work on the 7th day, Rashi says it looked as if He finished the work on the 7th day because He kept on working and creating right up until the very moment that Shabbos came in. So He wasn't working on Shabbos, but it looked as if, because as we said, the present doesn't really exist, right? So for us to be able to split time into such an infinitesimally small amount, such that we know when 1 microsecond is in Shabbos and when 1 microsecond later it is, We can't do that, but he can. Okay, step 3. What questions do we have on Rashi? Yeah.
So what we said is, where's the balance in having 6 days or 6.5 days, quote unquote, of work, and only like a day of rest? And I feel like that can tie into the question.
Where's the balance?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We can talk about that. Yeah, that'll be part of step 4. It's not necessarily a question on Rashi, but it's a bigger question which we'll address. Please God. Yes, Sam.
What's the difference between Sabbath and rest? Because he says Sabbath came, rest came. I thought they were synonymous.
Yeah, that's a good question as well.
Is that not on the
There are multiple words for rest. The word in the verse is shavas, right? He shavas, which means, in a certain sense, to refrain. But shavas, if you'll recall, can also mean other things. The word shin bet can sometimes mean shav, meaning to sit, like yeshiva is a place where we sit, right? Moshav is a place where we rest. It's like a settlement. Sometimes it means shav, like teshuvah, meaning to return. Lashuv means to return. So you return back to your source. You return to your essence, which is another beautiful concept of what Shabbos is. So that's a type of rest. But menucha, nach, means something is like inertial. It's at rest. It's not moving. Like the word Noach. We'll see. He brought menucha to the world. He brought rest to the world. So we'll see. Okay. Ephraim, Samuel, Cole.
I think one of the questions I have is, why does Rashi consider Shabbat sacred?
Well, why is that's not necessarily in the Rashi, is it?
I guess he talks about the profane and the sacred.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right, and it says in the verse that he sanctified, he made it sacred, right? He made it sacred. So what does the word kodesh mean? That's a big question. Maybe we can see if we can have time to answer that. Samuel, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I don't know if it ties in with Rashi, but if we talk about the fundamentals, what makes a day a day? We are thinking 24 hours.
Right, okay. Okay. If we have time, okay? We'll see if we can get through Rashi, and then after that, yeah, Cole.
Why did God need a rest?
That's a great question.
These are all level 4 questions.
Why did God need to rest? I'd say that's a good question on Rashi. There's other more specific questions on Rashi, but that's a good one. Lewis?
Why does it matter if God finished the creation on the 7th day? Like, God is above the idea of days and creation and Shabbat itself.
Okay, similar question to Cole. Why does he need to rest?
Right.
Great. Nate?
So conceptually, God is constantly creating. Like, for our existence, wouldn't be able to exist without him constantly willing it into existence. So is that true rest?
That's a great question.
Good question.
Awesome. That was a lot of step 3s. Aaron?
I don't know. Whenever I see answers like this, like the first one is just like, how are we supposed to make sense of these answers that are just like, it's beyond your comprehension. You can't like wrap your mind around it.
What do you mean? You can't wrap your mind? That's what we're doing right now. We're wrapping our mind. We are wrapping our minds around the answer. That's what we're trying to do. Look, everything in the universe is going to be half revealed and half concealed. There are always going to be secrets that we will never understand about this universe. But if we imagine that God wants us to be thinking beings, right? Who he gave us a brain, which means he wants us to use it, which means that the universe is capable of being understood. So it's amazing that we live in a universe where we're always at the cusp of some things we can understand and some things we cannot. So even if we can't understand the whole depth of this Rashi, there's something we can understand. Yeah.
What Aaron's getting at is like, here it says man can't understand time and moments, yet here we are trying to understand time and moments.
Oh, okay. So then repeat your question because I didn't understand it. If we can't understand time, then what? We do need to understand that God can understand things that we can't. And he can manipulate time in the way that we can't. But did you have a deeper question than that? A different question?
Why is Rabbi Shimon saying this if we are sitting here understanding it?
Okay, fine. Why do we need to know that God stops at a hair's breadth, maybe? Yeah, Ethan?
Is it possible to complete without working?
What?
Is it possible to complete something without working?
Well, I guess, tell me if your question is this. Is the introduction of rest really a completion of work? That would have been, that was definitely one of my questions, is how can you really call, resting, the world didn't have rest, so now that there is rest, that's the completion of the work? The work would have been complete if you didn't rest. So
it almost reminds me I'm a musician, so if you write something and you record it, I don't feel complete until I record it and listen to it and sit back.
Okay, fair enough.
That seems more complete than
Could be.
if I just
Good.
wrote the lesson.
I like it. All right, there's another question, which perhaps you didn't know that you could ask this question, which is that oftentimes, or sometimes, Rashi will give two answers to a question. And we are allowed to ask, why, Rashi, did you feel the need to supply two answers? And almost always, the answer is going to be because neither answer fits 100% with the text. And so we need two answers to get all the way, probably on a really deep level. Okay, so let's try to figure it out. Why does Rashi need two answers? That's kind of the first, that's the easiest thing to answer because it's the most technical. So the first thing that Rashi says, he suggests that, okay, why does it say that he completed the work on the seventh day? Because it seems like he completed the work on the seventh day. So tell me, why is that not 100%?
We didn't see it.
Because that's not what the Torah says. The Torah says he completed the work on the seventh day. It doesn't say it looks like he completed the work on the seventh day. So according to the simple understanding, it's as if he completed the work on the seventh day because he went right up to the seventh day. But that's not perfect, because that's not what the text says. So the alternative answer is, actually, he did complete the work on the seventh day. He was still working on the seventh day because the work was rest. What's the problem with that answer?
He didn't rest.
What? He did. He created menucha. He created rest.
What is the definition of rest in this case?
It's a bit of a self-defeating answer, isn't it? How can you say that resting is work? That was his question on the second answer. That's why Rashi didn't rely on the second answer. So you see, there's slight issues with each answer, which is why Rashi is compelled to bring two answers. Is everyone following so far? The problem with the first answer is that it seems like he worked. No, the Torah says he finished the work on the seventh day. So it's not 100% fitting into the words. The problem with the second answer, however, is when you say that God was actually working because he created rest, well, you can't say that resting is working. The two are polar opposites from each other. So on a certain level, you can say he created something called rest.
Then he rested.
What?
The two answers is he created rest and then he rested.
Well, he introduced rest into the world. Now, this is where we get into a very interesting step forward, which is, why does the world need rest? Like you were asking, and who else said, why do you need to put rest in there? It would be done. So here is where we go back to our big picture understanding of the universe, that the heavens and the earth are a place of process and destination. And we said that this world is a world of process, right? All the way at the beginning, Shemayim and Aretz. Shemayim means Sham, that means destination. This is a world of process. This is a world of running. This is a world of movement. The world itself is not a place of rest. It's not naturally a place of rest. And so when God creates the world, originally, the concept of rest is foreign to this universe. God has to actually introduce something called rest unnaturally into the world, and that's what Shabbos is. Now, why does he do that? So we explained before, because as human beings, and particularly as Jews, we need a persistent reminder that there's a part of us that that is very much involved in the world, and that the reason for our being here and the reason that we have bodies is that we can go work on the world, right? Like we said, build a house, get married, have kids, go do all kinds of things that fix the world. We're here to elevate the world from its natural, mundane state into something that's awesome and beautiful and holy and reveals the godliness in everything. That's what we're here to do. But if we don't have that reminder that there's a part of us that exists that has nothing to do with what we do or build or make or create in this world, there's a part of us that exists beyond that. And that's what Shabbos is. The rest is the cessation of work. If you want to have a good definition for Shavas, it's cessation. It's the removal of ourselves from the creative physical realm so that we can remember, oh, I am a being that transcends this physical world. And from that position of strength and certainty and clarity, then I can go into the next week and build with an eye towards that. That everything I work on and everything I do is not just in order to sustain itself. You know, if you built a machine that all it did was keep itself running, that would be the most pointless machine in existence. So Shabbos, and I was telling you guys, the guys who came a little bit earlier, that there's 6 days in the week and then a seventh day of rest, which parallels 6 dimensions in time, in space. So as human beings who live in the three-dimensional world, there are 6 directions that we can move in. Front, back, left, right, up, and down. And those parallel the 6 days of the week. The seventh day, which is the day that gives meaning and purpose to all the other 6 days of the week, that corresponds to the point in the middle of those 6 directions. You know, if you draw points on a piece of paper, those points have no meaning in their relationship to anything real until you add a 0, 0 onto the graph. Once you add that 0, 0 point onto the graph, then in relation to that 0, 0, every other point has a place of purpose and where it is in the world. Shabbos is that 0, 0 on the graph. As soon as I have Shabbos, now I know why I'm building and why I'm working and why I'm fixing. Not so that the world can just keep running, but rather so that we can take what is all those little hidden points in the world and say, where are they moving to? And the same thing is true with myself. That's what the introduction of rest is. That's why the world's not complete without rest. That's why we rest because God rested. Is because just as God is a creator, we're also a creator. But God is more than just a creator. He transcends the creation, and so do we. So there's a part of us that exists that is identified by more than just what we do. Isn't that exciting now to go into Shabbos with that?
It's pretty awesome.
Cole, you had a question?
Yes. So we know that light and darkness were separated. There's at this point at the 6th day there's night and day. Can't you say that you plant as at night it activates its rest. It stops its purpose, which is soaking in the rays of the sun, CO2, and it rejuvenates itself.
Okay.
Can you not say that's rest?
Yes and no. It's a rest that is a necessary function of the physical world. In other words, that's the type of rest where it's like, oh, let me catch my breath. In other words, right? There's the rest, which is just the ebb and flow of life, where you just can't go on a flat-out run for 24 hours, so you have to pause in order to take a breather. But that's not the rest that we're talking about. This isn't the day of Shabbos, while it is very good for catching your breath, that's not the purpose of the rest. The purpose of the rest is to say, there's something other than just doing. So I'm resting regardless of whether I'm tired. That's not why I'm resting. I'm resting because in the rest itself, in the cessation itself, there's something that I find that I am. Joey.
So could we almost say that the rest associated with Shabbat isn't necessarily physical, but it's like spiritual rest.
That's right. That's why Nachmanides says, if you put your head down on the pillow on Friday evening and you wake up on Saturday night, you have not successfully done what you're meant to do on Shabbos. That's not the point of Shabbos.
Can you also say that Shabbat if we take the idea of process and destination, that Shabbat becomes like the destination?
It is a taste of destination. That's right. We said, the Talmud says that Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. Just a taste. Why 1/60th? Because if you know the laws of kashrut, right? So if you have less than a 60th of milk that falls into a big cholent pot, it's like it doesn't exist, right? More than a 60th, now you've got milk and meat. 60th is the cusp of something that is like the thing that it's describing. It's the beginning of something meaningful. So that's why it's a 60th.
Interesting. When we were talking earlier about like having part of like an ego, like to amplify like the good.
Yeah.
I had heard the idea like that the great like sages, a great community leaders had like a 60th of ego or like a 60th.
Very good. Yes. Yes. Just enough to get by. Man, there's so much to talk about. This is the introduction to Shabbos. There's a lot more to say, but that's the beauty. Next week, I guess we'll begin with version 2 of the story. We're going to reset everything. We're going to start with the name Hashem Elohim. This is now creation in expression versus creation in potential. And you're going to see the way in which the creation is described is totally different from the first chapter. And we're going to have to figure out why would God do that. The biblical critics say this is the greatest example of how we know that there's 2 authors to the Torah, because the Torah just included 2 creation stories. I say that's ridiculous. I say that's a ridiculous way to read the text. But okay, you're allowed to have your opinion. All right, guys.